Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the FM Channel podcast. My name is Claudio Rojas. I'm one of the co-owners and senior recruiters at Alex Young Recruitment. Very excited about today's episode. It's a bit different to normal because I'll normally be speaking to an FM professional and letting them tell me about their journey into the industry, how they got there, what they like about it, what they hate about it. Today we're going to be focusing on the importance of marketing and digital marketing, I guess. To companies within the built environment, FM and maintenance, or the built environment. So I'm joined by Charlotte Waters. Charlotte, welcome to the show.
Hi there. Nice to see you again.
You too. And Charlotte, you are director at Morton Waters Marketing Agency. Excellent. So just for everybody at home then, so hopefully there'll be viewers, listeners out there. If you're a director or business owner or somebody quite senior within an SME service provider, hopefully be able to take some, and you're not sure what marketing is or digital marketing, hopefully be able to take some good pointers away from today. That's the idea anyway. So,
yeah.
So as an intro, if you could give us a bit of background, I guess, Charlotte, if you could maybe just introduce yourself, what you do, who you do it for, and maybe how you got to where you are today, just to give us a bit of background, if that's okay.
Sure. So Morton Waters is the creation of myself and my co-founder, Michelle.
Yep.
And we are now a company of 4, and both of us have a background in PR. And so I think for us, really, all of it is about whether or not we can find a story for somebody, something that's of relevance to the listener or the reader, as much as it is relevance to the company. So we kind of come from that point of view, and we typically support companies, SMEs in the built environment who are looking to be more visible, to differentiate themselves from their competitive set, or generally to show their prospects that that they're making the right choice in choosing them. And I think in your intro, you mentioned about, understanding about marketing. And I think it is a topic that it's such an enormously broad church that it's incredibly difficult for people really to understand all of the nuance and all of the purpose. And it has so many different aspects to it. But I think generally, for me, it comes down to, if you get to a point where your pipeline is looking a bit woeful, that's because your marketing either isn't working or you're not doing enough of it. Because that's really what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite often seen as something that's separate to the growth or the fundamentals of running the business. But really, it's about giving something for your sales team to work from, to get people into the pipeline, to give you some prospects. And in particular, really giving people that you actually want to work with, rather than the people who come to the door who you think, they're not really for us, or why do we always get these sorts of projects? Why can't we work with those guys? Why can't I be on that project? Yeah. And really, that's what marketing is about, is saying, right, who is the right customer for us for now, for the journey, and how can we get them?
Right, okay. So
to choose
targeted, basically targeted.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And I think it impacts recruitment as well, really, but and I think we see that more and more now, actually, that companies that don't have high visibility are struggling to recruit, because particularly with the younger generations, so much of their life is digital, they're expecting to see that. And I think that's part of marketing as well now, really, that they need to be able to see, this is somewhere I want to go and work, I'm going to choose to go and do that thing, or I'm going to be motivated to move from where I am. Yeah. And I think that's probably...
So maybe, would it be fair to say that maybe the new generation, instead of looking at a company's website to see what they do on their website, are they going to be looking for what content they've got out there on social media, as opposed to looking at a website? Yeah. Someone told me the other day that websites are kind of a little bit irrelevant now, because people see and search for content that's out there, videos and recommendations.
It depends what kind of activity, really, I suppose. I mean, there's this kind of serendipity to somebody somebody being on LinkedIn and either seeing a post from a company or an ad, or whatever it is that they see while they're in that moment, and it strikes them to think, gosh, that's either an interesting way, or I hadn't realized they did that thing, or that it happens as a serendipitous moment. Or there's the bit where you're thinking, right, I've got to find a short list of people to do this thing for me, and I need to identify people, and that's when websites come in. So they're still enormously valuable.
Right.
But really, it's doing the two, because if you just have a website that sits in isolation, you've either got to have an incredibly high-ranking website, which most people don't really have, or a lot of ad spend to get people to find it. Whereas if you're also doing the other activities, well, then you get the kind of, as you say, this scrolling activity, and everybody's looking at what everybody else is doing and what's going on in the market, and yeah, you kind of come across things at the same time. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, cool. So let's just start with, I think maybe the basics for everybody, so we're on the same page, because I know that I didn't know what it was originally. How would you describe what is digital marketing for someone that doesn't know? Because when someone mentioned it to me the first time around, maybe a couple of years ago, I just assumed it was paying for advertising space on LinkedIn or Facebook, and it's just kind of throw money at the problem, and these big companies take it, and people might see your advert. What is it? Just that? Well, it's not just that, but what more than that is it?
So, I mean, I think digital marketing is almost a term really that should probably be retired in a way, because it's a bit like saying digital shopping, you know?
Yeah, it's true.
It's just so much part of our life, really. So marketing, back to that idea of the pipeline and filling that up. But we kind of look at it in three separate streams, I suppose, in a way, in that you have owned, earned, and paid. So you have the earned, which is when I was talking earlier about the story, you know, is something of value to that person. So that might be some PR activity where you have to convince somebody else that what you're saying they should carry in their channel. So then you've got the owned, which are the channels that you have that are, you know, your website, your social media, your newsletter, things where you can govern exactly what goes into that. You don't have to convince somebody else along the way that they need to generously give you their access to their readers. And then the paid is the, you know, the LinkedIn ads, the PPC, but also things like exhibitions, some of the webinars, some of the CPD stuff that you might get from Reba perhaps, or, you know, other professional organizations, they might come under paid. So they broadly fit into those categories, really. Oh, that's notification.
No worries. Cool. Okay, so and you specifically work for SMEs within the construction sector, within the built environment. Tell us a little bit about that, and maybe why somebody who's listening today, who's got an SME with like an M&E service provider, why they should invest or look at digital marketing. Do you know what I mean? Marketing.
So, marketing generally. I think well, certainly we work with companies generally that have some kind of interest in either compliance or risk management. They're generally in that kind of area. So they might be to do with construction, or they might be actually the buildings are in existence, and then it's their usage and how do you keep people safe and assets safe, and, you know, all of that kind of element of it. So for us, it brings up loads of elements that we could talk about, but obviously they're highly competitive areas. And so if you're not actually telling somebody what you do, why you do it, how you do it, you know, where you've got experience of. I mean, we spoke to somebody recently for a client to do some research for them, and they said, oh, you know, well, maybe I'd be interested, but I don't actually know if they're capable of doing the type of projects that we do. If you haven't proactively gone and said to somebody who might be a prospect, you know, this is the type of case study we worked on, this is our approach, this is how we overcame this challenge, then really you're just leaving it up to them and who they come across and who they've worked with before. And, you know, does somebody new start and say, oh, actually, I worked with those guys before, that was great. But you want to take control of that really and start to dictate how people see you, rather than it just being, happenstance.
Cool.
So I think that's generally where we are with those sorts of companies, that they are quite often they're companies that have grown a lot through organic growth. You know, they're clearly very good at what they do. As a result of that, they've been referred, they've grown and grown and grown. But then they reach a point where actually they can't grow anymore because of the fact that their perception in the market is that they are, you know, that they're maybe too small for us. You know, maybe they're local, maybe they haven't got the reach. Maybe they haven't worked on this kind of thing, but can I trust them to make that leap? And they want to work with tier one contractors, but actually, how do you get into that thing? Or if you want to work with, you know, a particular developer or a particular building owner, how do you make that leap into their world rather than expecting that they're going to come out and find you? And one of the things that it does particularly is it gives you the opportunity of increasing margin, because you're increasing your specialism in that area for them, so that it stops it from being just a completely price discussion, you know, a massive, you know, we talk about all the time, the race to the bottom, who's going to be the cheapest. You know, you can try and remove that by saying, you know, our workforce is, you know, they're all highly qualified, they've all got all of their tickets. They're all, we can tell you that 99% of call outs happen within the first 2 hours. Whatever evidence you've got starts to remove that from being, well, let's just find the cheapest, because then you start saying to people, well, do you want the cheapest, or do you want the people who are going to be there in an hour and a half?
Yeah.
And so to take that opportunity to talk about the things that you do really, really well. Wow, definitely.
Yeah, no, absolutely, no, I agree. And typically, what would you say is if someone's listening and they're thinking, oh, that sounds good, we should probably do that, see if it works. Well, I think as humans, we're naturally quite impatient, and I think typically, what would you say is a turnaround to get results? You start to, put a marketing strategy into place. It doesn't happen overnight, obviously, or within. It's not like an advert that you just put out and hope for the best and see. It's a strategy. Typically, what do you tell your clients they can what kind of timescale they can expect to see a return?
I mean, I wouldn't want to say that it's all down to us at all, but we had a company that came to us 18 months ago, and they were a £7 million company, and they are just now shy of being nearly a £12 million company. So, it's part of a collective activity, but it's pretty quick, the effort into doing it. And we can see, because we like to keep an eye on all the data that comes in, so we can run metrics and look at increases in visibility in terms of your website visibility, but also your personal connections or your company LinkedIn connections. And they can be affected pretty fast, really, and not through paid activity in terms of paid visibility, but through the organic activity of sharing content that's of relevance, interacting with other people's content, sending out newsletters. I mean, the number of times that we've sent out newsletters that have generated business is amazing, because people think, oh, well, they know us. We worked with them years ago. They know us, but they just drop out of people's thought process. And generally, we are quite lazy people, all of us, and we like, somebody else to do half or more of the work for us. And so if somebody's email comes in on the day that I'm thinking about it, or when I'm planning something, and I can think, brilliant, they're great, I remember them, they were fantastic, I must remember to do something with that. All those opportunities are there.
It's basics, isn't it? It's reminding people. I mean, I tell candidates that keep in touch with us, because we speak to people all the time. They contact us, and the minute you drop off the radar, you start to assume that person's possibly found a job. Do you know what I mean already? So, and they call you and say, oh, I'm still looking. Oh, good, it's good that you called me. I wasn't sure whether to call because, I didn't want to pester you. It's like, it's better to keep your name in the fresh in the recruiter's mind. Otherwise, you start to assume that person has now probably found something, because we're not the only agency they're speaking to. They speak to a few other agencies. We've not been able to help out on this occasion, so somebody has.
And the proactive nature of it. Particularly, I think, with that, somebody who's proactively kind of reminding you of stuff is somebody that you think, well, actually, this feels like a better fit for me than somebody who was just sitting around waiting for things to drop into their lap. I'd much rather have somebody who was going out and looking. And I do think particularly the part about saying, who you want to target, as opposed to who's just going to come to you. You might have 1,000, 2,000 contacts on your LinkedIn, but are they all necessarily the people that you want? So it's how you go through that kind of process of segmenting people into people I just want to know generally what we're doing, but very specifically people I want to do. And we can use some of the tools as well in quite strategic ways. So, for example, things like case studies have so many different uses. So it might be that you use that case study as an opportunity to go back to a client that you really loved, that felt like your one shot to do a really high profile activity, and then nothing ever came of it again. So if you get back in touch with them to say, we want to write it up as a case study, and can we get a quote from you, and do you remember how we got to that point with that project and that we needed to overcome those things? So can I just remind you of how we talked about that? It serves the purpose of reminding them, but it also gives you then testimonials for bid documents, and it gives you content to share on LinkedIn. It's got this enormous potential that comes out of it. So we're quite keen on using things in effective and cost-effective ways, really. Rather than just one-hit wonders. We like things to have quite a bit of longevity.
Yeah, excellent. And do you have, I don't know, this is whether you have the stats of how many SMEs within the built environment there are, and how many actually use marketing to an effective way. Do you have any idea that what
There
that
isn't
is,
really
what that
any
looks
research
like?
for that, and it's interesting
Yeah.
because when you look at statistics that are created, then they talk about B2B. I think they are predominantly based around marketing B2B, and the adoption in that sector is massively different to it is, because it'll say something like, you know, LinkedIn's used by X number of people in every business, and then we look at it and we think it's nowhere near that. It's nowhere near. And the number of companies that we work with that are, you know, clearly very established in their sector and yet have never really used digital platforms that are sitting there waiting to be filled up with activity and excitement. And so, yeah, I think it's very underutilized. And I do also think it's particularly because generationally, you know, the guys who were running those businesses, you know, that was never their environment in the first place. But particularly, again, when you're looking to recruit or when you're looking to get project managers from other construction companies, other developers who are younger, then they're all on the platforms and they need to be using it. And there's a kind of natural reticence as well, I think, that people have. You know, do I want to commit something? You know, we've all seen cancel culture and you know, the fear that comes with that. Am I going to be the person? So it's a, you know, part of what we like to do is to give structure to it and to give people the confidence, and potentially even take all of the effort away from them so that we just do it all, so that people can, feel that they can use it and, you know, get benefit from it. But I do think it is massively underutilized. And I think there's a big difference as well between the people who are participating in it in a, you know, they'll like other people's comment or like other people's content, or they'll post things, you know, or they'll interact in a kind of personal way, but they won't do it in a business way. There's a big disparity between those two.
I think people are a little bit nervous what to kind of put out there or what their opinion is in case
I think
their peers and their colleagues might think of them.
Yeah, maybe. I think that's a big part of it. And also just, you know, should we be mentioning this one? Do I know whether or not, you know, are we going to go for this project? I mean, we used to have a client who they kind of like, we don't want to use any social media because then everybody else can see who we're connected to. And we were saying, well, obviously you can go into your profile and change the settings so that people can't see who you're connected to. Because they were like, well, if we bid for a particular, you know, if we're on a framework or it's coming up for renewal and we start making connections, what if our competitors start seeing that? And all of that you can hide. You know, there's ways around so that you don't have to be completely transparent with people. It's not necessarily a reason not to use it. And when you were asking before about the time frame for getting, you know, even within a month, you can see the improvement in visits to a website. And, you know, driving people to take an action. So it's pretty quick.
Well, that's nothing, isn't it? A month. I mean, that's great. I mean, I think that's always the worry is how much are we going to have to spend and how long are we going to have to wait to see a return, and is it going to cost us a fortune? And people might think it's, you know, because it is the long game. It is being consistent and putting the content out there. But yeah, I mean, a month is nothing really. It's great. If you can see results that in such a short space of time, then it's definitely worth it in my book.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and it's enormously gratifying for us. What we generally don't get visibility of is the connection all the way through to sales. But what we see instead is companies that don't want to choose to not work with us. So they obviously feel it. Even if they can't, you know, we justify it in terms of metrics that we can get hold of. But you know, we very rarely get, like I said before, about making the whole contribution to the turnover. Of course, I know that's not all us, but, you know, so they can't really quantify the contribution. But in that case, you know, what they're paying is something like less than 1% of that growth. And so really, that justification to do it, you know, it's there.
And you mentioned before about potentially generation thing where the people who have set the business up and they're not really on social media, perhaps they're not from that era. Do you have much trouble sort of, how do you convince somebody that this is the way forward, that this is what you need to do to get from A to B or from B to C? Someone who doesn't have a LinkedIn account or a Facebook account, but they're kind of, you know, they've been running the successful business for 15, 20 years, but it's kind of plateaued. And then how do you kind of convince that person or people?
It's a difficulty, if I'm honest with you. I think people have to have a degree of open-mindedness to it. You know, I think we can show them all the statistics and all the information and all the testimonials and, you know, all the case studies, but really they've just got to, you know, be a bit open-minded to think that it's got potential. And really the investment really doesn't warrant huge concern over it.
Yeah.
But hopefully, most people start with a bit of trepidation. We'll see how we'll see how it goes, and then they don't stop. So
it's addictive.
Yeah, I think it proves that it works. And I think we contribute to the business in all sorts of ways, really, of helping them to understand just broader communication within themselves and within, how they speak about themselves, and even down to how they celebrate things. It's beneficial in lots of ways, but it is difficult, I think, for some people to adopt a completely alien concept. And so there is a bit, it's for brave souls rather than somebody who really needs a lot of convincing, because I don't know how much evidence you'd need to convince you that it was worth it at that point.
And what happens if an SME doesn't get involved with digital marketing, or if they don't invest in it? I mean, where is kind of the market now, or the industry? Will they just get left behind? Will they be kind of left on the shelf? Will they get forgotten?
I think it's something like 82% of new projects come through some digital channel. So it's really high, and they'll look at 8 or 9 different touch points before they even get in touch. Most people don't want to pick up the phone to a salesperson at the beginning. They want to feel familiar. They want to be convinced. They want to get a sense of what they're getting themselves into. It's the same way that we buy everything else. We are consumers at heart. And we've moved from this idea of going into a shop and talking transactionally with somebody to finding that quite kind of like, oh, that's quite shocking. I want to go and get all of my information and all of my research, and I want to know what I'm getting into before I get to that point. And so if you're not there for someone to be able to do that research, you just won't be on the list. And that would be dreadful for lots of people. So I do think it is, it's a hugely untapped resource. For people, and they would really miss out. But also the elements I've spoken of before, of things like the margin. It's not just the visibility, it's being able to present yourself in a way that reflects the type of customers you would like to have, and therefore to remove some of the price sensitivity. And recruitment. And we spoke to a business growth consultant recently. We have quite a nice relationship, and they were saying that it impacts saleability. 80% of companies don't sell in the first round of selling. So if somebody's on an exit plan,
wow, it's quite high.
Then really, it's really high. And so obviously, if you're in, those people at that point, that investor is also looking to buy something. So they need to be convinced that what they're going to buy is a really great opportunity for them. And so if there's no visibility, if it looks a bit underloved, if the website's out of date, then you're going to price that at a very high margin sale, or you're going to think, well, let's see if we can get some, get this one down as well. So I think it affects, from all the way through, from today and the jobs we do, to tomorrow and the people we'd like to recruit, to 10 years down the line, what we want to do with exiting the company.
Wow, it's going to affect everything, really. And you mentioned earlier on a business that is going from 7 to 12. I mean, can you give us other examples of businesses that you've worked with? Maybe not give us names, but just give us the impact that it's had over certain spaces of time as well, so that people are like thinking, you might convince them that this is definitely for us. This could be the next stage.
So we've got within, I think in 18 months, we've grown people's LinkedIn profiles from kind of, or they're company ones. Everybody talks about company profiles as being non-existent. Nobody participates and nobody really wants to grow them. So we've got one, and we've grown it from 400 to over 2,000 in a year. We've got examples of sending out newsletters and people replying immediately with projects that are immediate installations themselves, and then national rollouts of projects. We've got LinkedIn posts that have prompted high ticket ongoing project activity. So there's a lot, there is a lot of evidence. It's just whether or not people want to hear it, but it's definitely there. And as I say, that kind of the combination of the two, the serendipitous moment of somebody wanted something and they saw something, as well as also the whole kind of long lifetime brand building element that means that serendipitous event can happen, because you can't just send one post at that moment and it'll all be fine, because actually that person's got to go off and look at your website, look at your case studies, be reminded of a newsletter, got to see the whole kind of environment.
Yeah,
Make their decision that you did the best choice.
Great stuff. And do you think, because there's a lot of talk, because I think I see a lot of content about digital marketing geared towards recruitment, and how recruiters are going to have to change what they do, because it's not just about picking up the phone or smashing the phone anymore like it used to be. I mean, is that the same? Is that pretty much how you guys interpret kind of you selling your business to B2B? It's not just about picking up the phone and introducing yourself. It's it's about putting your brand out there, your kind of your business brand. And
you want them to, even if you did pick up the phone and make that call, you can guarantee they're going to go off and Google you. Or they're going to go off and directly go to your website, or they're going to check you out. It's what people do now. It's so ingrained in our culture, for everything. I'll go and look you up on Instagram. I'll see where I can find, see if I can dig a bit deep, see what else I can uncover. So people definitely. I think you need a combination of all the factors. Sadly, there's no magic bullet to say, you couldn't say picking up the phone didn't work anymore, and you couldn't say that doing marketing activity didn't work anymore. It's a whole combination of all of those factors, because you can fill up the pipeline, but if nobody's actually doing the sales to follow it through, you're not necessarily going to get them over the line. Similarly, if you've got somebody hitting the phones all day, but you've got no website, you've got no collateral you can show them, you've got no case studies, you've got no nothing. You're probably not going to get very far, and someone's going to get really frustrated.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a happy medium of both, I think, isn't it? Of the kind of old school kind of skills and new school, really.
Definitely. I think that people used to say, I feel like people see marketing as very separate from sales. And for us, it's very connected to it. Although, we kind of say we can bring people to the door and we can't make them buy. We can certainly influence that process as well. And we can bring more people to the door. But they definitely shouldn't be seen as disconnected, because the whole point of marketing really is to help a company to achieve what it's trying to achieve in its usually financial ambition. And so, if it's completely separate to sales, then why would you do it? You don't need to do it as a vanity thing. You need to do it because it serves a purpose for the business. So, for us, those two things are really connected. We generally have quite a good visibility within a company of their new business plans and, kind of a year ahead of where they're aiming for. And that really helps us as well.
Yeah, excellent. That's really, really interesting. It's all interesting stuff. And because you focus within the built environment, do you see a lot of businesses that aren't doing the marketing strategy, the new age kind of marketing strategies?
Yeah, I definitely see a lot of companies. I mean, you can see a lot of companies that are very busy, as in they're sending a lot of stuff out, but nobody reads it, nobody's interested in it. And I'd be interested to see what their metrics are on their websites. Is it actually converting to anything purposeful?
So what kind of thing is that then? What kind of things should people or businesses not be putting out there then?
When it's very much all about us, this is all of our, I don't know, I've got a personal thing about the office dog or things related to that. I think there's a degree to which you need to talk about culture, again, particularly for recruitment, but also generally, I think people, we respond to people we like knowing. I like to know about new starters. I like to know about the team that worked on a project. But ultimately, what I'm trying to do is to find out what those people are bringing to the activity that I'm doing. I don't want to just know that, Karen has a dog and, she lives in Staffordshire. I just think, well, I don't need to know that. What I want to know is what did Karen bring to this project that was really insightful and great, and had the client value that? And I think that it doesn't necessarily get all the way through. Sometimes people are like, well, we've got to share something. We've got to write something. And sometimes also it can be really thin content. You see a lot of that on websites. So they've obviously thought, well, we must do a case study. And so it just has 3 lines about what we did. We went to this place, we did this thing, and this is the date that it took place. I missed this whole opportunity, not only from a kind of keyword and search optimization part, but also for really richly explaining to somebody else why you made really great decisions. And why
the story, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Why would you, if you think about everything as a magazine, why would somebody choose to read that? Why would somebody pay to read what you're putting out? If it's just I don't know, you just see quite a lot of content that you just think, what's the point
No,
of it?
no meat on the bone kind of thing, no detail. And I think we're all interested in stories, aren't we, at the end of the day? I think, but
be brought along, but I don't really I don't want to be sold anything particularly overly, and I don't want to get to the end of it and think, oh, I don't really know what I was meant to take away from that.
Yeah,
I think we see quite a lot of that kind of
well,
content.
you might read a bit of content, carry on reading it, and then realise, look, I've just wasted 30 seconds. I'll never get that back.
No, and it's the worst thing, particularly when you've done something like downloaded an ebook, and then you think, oh, I've just traded my email address for this. And now I know that they're going to email me, and I don't want it.
Yeah, within 2 hours, they've contacted you already. So annoying.
You definitely need to have value for it.
Yeah. Okay. I know what you're saying about the company dog. I think I think Fridays is the day that everyone sticks a picture of a dog.
Yeah.
On LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit. I try and keep it down to maybe an hour in the morning, and then maybe look at it sort of over lunchtime. But yeah, Fridays is kind of dog day.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks it's
I think it's definitely about understanding the channels and what they need to be used for. So each of the, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, they've all got amazing possibilities. The new one, Clubhouse, they've all got lots of things about them.
Yeah.
But you can't share the same content in all of them because they're all for different purposes. So, maybe actually LinkedIn isn't the place for your office dog, but Instagram almost certainly would be.
Yeah.
And possibly Facebook, particularly if it was a staff type of Facebook. So I think, it's about choosing the platform wisely, choosing the channel.
And for business, LinkedIn, what else would you recommend?
I think it depends what type of business. So certainly what we've seen, back to the metrics thing, we look at the dates to send out newsletters. This is a bit of a roundabout answer, but I'll get there. We look at dates to send out newsletters, and we used to find, in fact, working for a company that very much targeted interior designers and architects, that their weekend open rates for newsletter was much better than if they sent it in the week. And that also played through into targeting them through Pinterest and Instagram.
Right. Okay.
Whereas targeting somebody, a lot of our clients, if you look at their website stats, they do this. So this is the weekend, and it goes up because they are being visited by people who sat at their desks with a desktop. I've got my job to do. I want to do my job. I want to find the information that I want to find, and I don't want to think about it when I go home. So it's a very 9 to 5:30, desktop-driven, LinkedIn, that kind of channel. Whereas somebody who's a creative, interesting, that is also how they just are as people. They want to look outside of work. They're inspired by things. They're looking for different solutions. So certainly looking at the different persona makeup of the channels makes a difference.
Okay, great. And you mentioned Clubhouse earlier. Have you? I've not been on it. I've heard of it. I know what it's about. I'm too nervous to go on it in case I don't come off it. I've got to do my day job. I've got to try and. We're quite busy at the moment, which is great. And I'm dedicating, trying to dedicate just 1 hour in the morning onto LinkedIn and then checking it later. But I don't want another platform to get.
I don't know if I do really either. I feel at the moment, like a lot of them, as I mentioned, I think there's a big difference between B2B adoption and B2B marketing adoption. I feel like there's a lot of marketing conversation that's happening there. And that's part of what's making it seem like it's busy and got potential. And I'm not sure how much tolerance the rest of them, project managers, people involved in facilities, I'm not sure how much time those people have to be in those areas. I think that, it's a watching brief, I think, from me. I feel like it could be great, but also could just be a conversation that I didn't really need to have.
I think there's the whole kind of that it's invite only adds to you can't just join, you've got to be invited by somebody. I think that adds to the kind of the prestige or the kind of exclusive-ness at the minute, doesn't it? So
it does. It's always a nice hook to have. But I think that there are enough people not using LinkedIn and arguably even potentially Twitter to think, well, actually, let's start with that one first, because we know that that's where people are. So that's an environment that people are happy and comfortable and confident with. And if you're under leveraging that, I would definitely look to do that one first.
Great stuff.
And newsletters.
Cool. So just before we finish off then, and if there's anybody out there that's listening that's thinking, I wouldn't mind giving this a go, is there anything that they could do themselves that they might not already be doing, just to sort of see how it works and before
Yeah.
they maybe go to an agency like you or anybody else and say, okay, let me try and do this and see if I can get some results myself, and see that actually this does work. Maybe we should take the next step and speak to someone that can, you know, accelerate it.
Yeah, I think it's about understanding why you weren't using it to begin with. I think that would probably be where I started. You know, am I not using it because I don't have the time? Or am I not using it because I don't really understand it? And if you don't understand it, there are so many ways to learn about it. You know, I'm happy to give anybody a quick hour around LinkedIn if that's helpful. But, you know, there are loads of ways to understand it. And arguably with lots of these things, you just need to start if you don't ever start.
Yeah.
But, you know, generally when we start, you start with a strategy. You know, what are you trying to achieve? Why are you trying to do it? And so if people could have that in their head to avoid the office dog sharing of just content. And I think then to look at, you know, if you start by sharing some project information and some, you know, recent activities that you've done, and then look at your website traffic and see if you can see the connection where you can map where visits are coming from. So you can put the content on and see the traffic coming to the site. And if you can do that, then you can start to think, okay, well, that's what was worth doing, more worthwhile doing than I thought it was. And I think definitely posting from a personal LinkedIn would be the first place to start. Then companies then look at groups and other places where you can post longer articles. But I would start with something like that because that's quite accessible. And as I say, you know, happy to give somebody a quick guide around LinkedIn and give them some pointers if that's helpful.
Good. Well, thank you. Listen, I mean, there's some good tips there, and I hope that there's you know, some people out there listening to this thinking, actually, yeah, I'll give that a go, and just added some value to somebody out there that might be on the fringes of, I need to do something with this, but I don't know what to do. I know I was a little bit like that last year with LinkedIn. I knew that LinkedIn was good. I just needed someone to give me a bit of a
bit of a push and a bit of guidance.
Yeah, a bit of a template almost. Say this is how it can be used. And I did a similar kind of, I did a marketing course dedicated to recruitment, and it opened up my eyes. It was brilliant. So
I don't think there are many people that have started doing it and then completely stopped. I think people start and stop because they get too busy, and then they realise that actually the reason they were busy was because they were doing the activity. So I think it's definitely, you know, something to step into.
Absolutely. Cool. Listen, we'll leave it there. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Lovely to speak to you.
And you, and hopefully we'll catch up soon. Maybe even meet in person this time and go for a coffee in a few weeks.
Exciting! Do you know, I miss London so much. I can't tell you, or frankly, any city. I didn't realise how much I loved it until I couldn't go, and I see it on things, and it makes me really sad that it's so quiet. So I can't wait to go back and to see people in places.
I go out. I go out for lunch with my business partner, and we were just saying the other day, because we were in the office, and he said, I'm actually going to miss how quiet it is. At first, it's eerie and quite sad that it's empty. It's a beautiful city anyway to look at. But then, you know, going out at lunch at 12:30 when there's nobody there and you've got the place to yourself, it's great. But then when everybody comes back, we'll be like, what are you all doing here? Go away. Get out of my city. This is our city.
Yeah.
Anyway. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and we'll catch up soon.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Cool. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.